One of these record-breaking midfielders is a complete fraud, and the evidence is buried in a stat they never show you. I tracked every touch from last season and found the shocking weakness that ends the debate forever. Stay until the final comparison to see which club wasted their money. Declan Rice did not arrive in English football as a finished commander of the midfield, and Moisés Caicedo did not appear from Ecuador as a fully formed defensive phenomenon. Yet the moment their names began echoing across the Premier League, it felt as though destiny had been quietly preparing both men for a collision that would force the world to rethink what a modern midfielder truly is. Before either man wore the colors of Arsenal or Chelsea, before their price tags turned into headlines and debates, their journeys unfolded in opposite corners of the football world, shaping identities so distinct that even the grass beneath their boots seemed to react differently to their presence. What makes their story extraordinary is not simply the contrast in how they play, but the way their lives, choices, setbacks, and breakthroughs carve them into symbols of two philosophies struggling for dominance in English football. Declan Rice's path twisted through heartbreak long before it led him to North London. As a boy in the Chelsea Academy, he looked like the kind of player the club could mold into a future first-team anchor. Yet at 14, he was released an age when most kids are still figuring out who they want to be. That moment could have broken him. Many have fallen away after such news. Instead, Declan Rice walked out of Chelsea's facilities, not as a defeated teenager, but as a young boy carrying a fire so hot that it would turn rejection into rocket fuel. West Ham offered him a lifeline, but it was Rice who transformed that lifeline into a platform, climbing through the academy, exploding into the senior team, and refusing to let anyone forget the name that Chelsea once discarded. By the time he reached his early 20s, he was no longer just a promising midfielder. He was a leader, a captain, the heartbeat of West Ham United, lifting the Europa Conference League trophy, like a man who had redeemed an entire childhood wound. Moisés Caicedo's beginning could not have been more different. Thousands of miles away, tucked inside the fierce footballing spirit of Ecuador, a boy grew up dreaming of Europe, but knowing that dreams alone did not buy plane tickets or open doors. His journey was not supported by the glamour of a top academy. It was fueled by raw hunger, family sacrifice, and a gift that Brighton and Hove Albion would eventually recognize long before Chelsea paid the kind of money that turned skepticism into expectation. When Brighton signed him for a fee so small, it barely registered in the noise of transfer gossip. Few imagined he would skyrocket to become the most expensive player in British football. A short loan in Belgium sharpened him, toughened him, taught him survival football. When he returned to Brighton, the Premier League was about to meet a force that read the game with instincts that felt alien to his age. Under Roberto De Zerbi, Moisés Caicedo transformed from a talented newcomer into a midfield predator who saw passes before they were played and extinguished attacks before they were born. The roads that shaped Declan Rice and Moisés Caicedo could have remained separate forever, yet fate placed them just weeks apart in the same conversation when Arsenal broke the £100 million barrier to bring Rice to North London and Chelsea shattered the British transfer record to secure Caicedo. Suddenly, the world began comparing not just players, but philosophies. Arsenal wanted a box-to-box general who could control games without lowering his heartbeat. Chelsea wanted a defensive machine capable of covering ground with a relentlessness that reminded coaches of N'Golo Kanté. It never mattered that Declan Rice is an 8 and Moisés Caicedo is a 6. Debates rarely obey fairness. Instead, the Premier League found itself obsessed with a rivalry that neither player personally chased, but both embodied through their performances. Declan Rice walked into Arsenal as if he had been sculpted for the Emirates from the start. The weight of a £105 million transfer did not shrink him. It made him stand taller, as though responsibility activated something deeper within. In his fourth league match, Arsenal versus Manchester United, he delivered a moment so dramatic that it felt scripted for his coronation. 96th minute. Tension pressed against the stands like a held breath, and Rice struck a deflected shot that tore into the net, detonating the Emirates in a roar that told him instantly this was home. That goal did not prove he belonged. It proved he was going to be central to everything Arsenal hoped to achieve. Mikel Arteta experimented with him as a pure number 6 early on. But the more Rice touched the ball, the more obvious it became that he was wasted if confined to a single role. By sliding him into a box-to-box position, into the left-sided 8, into a deeper pivot when needed, Arteta unlocked a version of Declan Rice that could command any zone of the midfield like a man rotating between universes without losing composure. Moisés Caicedo, meanwhile, arrived at Chelsea without the benefit of a preseason, with the glare of a record fee burning holes into every opinion formed about him. His debut against West Ham was tough. A late penalty conceded, a storm of criticism waiting for him once the final whistle blew. But greatness is not determined by how a player starts. It is revealed in how he absorbs impact. Caicedo steadied himself, breathed through the pressure, and let the rhythm of Chelsea's midfield settle around him. As matches came, patterns formed. His reading of space sharpened Chelsea's spine. His reactions swallowed danger before it reached the penalty area. His chemistry with Enzo Fernandez gradually formed a midfield pairing built on balance. One anchoring, one distributing, both fighting the chaos of transitional football. And then came his defining moment of the season, a 50-yard chip against Bournemouth, a goal so outrageous it felt like he momentarily forgot he was a defensive midfielder. It sailed through the air as if his entire journey from Ecuador to Chelsea had been compressed into the arc of one audacious strike. Yet it is when comparing their playing styles that the tension between Declan Rice and Moisés Caicedo becomes electric. Declan Rice moves like a commander who reads the battlefield while standing on it. He uses his body as a shield, his brain as a compass, and his legs as the instrument that bridges defense. When he carries the ball, he drives with a stride that seems to absorb challenges rather than avoid them. His long-range passing can shift entire matches in seconds. One diagonal ball from Rice feels like a page being flipped in a story his opponents didn't know they were part of. His aerial dominance adds another dimension. When crosses fly into the box, Rice does not simply challenge, he erases fear by rising above it. His weakness lies only in the tightest spaces, moments when the half-turn demands acceleration he does not always possess. But even then, his positioning compensates. He does not throw himself into tackles with reckless eagerness. He snuffs out danger by arriving early, not late. Moisés Caicedo's style is carved from a different philosophy. Where Rice surveys, Caicedo pounces. He does not wait for attacks to mature, he disrupts them at birth. His success rate in ground duels is not the result of aggression alone, but of timing that seems almost preternatural. His interceptions are not pierced in the dark, they are predictions made with frightening accuracy. If a loose ball exists within 5 meters of him, it does not remain loose for long. Caicedo's weakness, ironically, rises from this aggression. His confidence in winning duels sometimes sends him charging into tackles with a ferocity that borders on dangerous. He walks the line between heroic and reckless, and occasionally steps over it. When that happens, the red card becomes a reminder that even machines can misfire. Offensively, he is limited compared to Rice, not because he lacks intelligence, but because Chelsea rarely asks him to climb into attacking spaces. Their instruction is simple: hold the fort, win the battles, stabilize the chaos. Declan Rice excels in carrying the ball forward 20 to 30 yards at a time, turning defense into attack with runs that feel like controlled avalanches. Caicedo excels in dispossessing and recycling possession, creating a rhythm so steady that teammates adjust their tempo around him. One man breaks lines with long passes, the other breaks attacks with surgical precision. One rises for aerial duels like a center back masquerading as a midfielder. The other crouches low, poised for interceptions like a predator calculating angles. Their careers before Arsenal and Chelsea further explain the divergence in their identities. Rice grew under the demands of English football, from childhood, learning structure, leadership, tactical discipline. Caicedo grew under the raw, instinctive, high-intensity football of Ecuador, where players must survive before they thrive. When Brighton introduced him to the Premier League, he blended South American urgency with European tactical shape. Rice, on the other hand, blended English leadership culture with continental technical refinement at Arsenal. What binds them, what forces their names into the same sentence again and again, is not similarity but contrast. Comparison thrives on difference, not likeness. Arsenal fans point to Rice's leadership, his long balls, his goals, his balance between destruction and creation. Chelsea fans point to Caicedo's interceptions, his press resistance, his ability to win ground duels, as though the ball belongs to him by natural law. Declan Rice's impact on Arsenal became undeniable in a single season. Suddenly, the midfield that had cracks became a fortress with windows that looked into the future. Rice lifted Arsenal's tempo, covered distances that unlocked attacking freedom for Martin Odegaard and others, and added goals that were never advertised when he was purchased. His volleys, long-range screamers, and clutch strikes gave Arsenal something more valuable than numbers: belief. And in the Champions League, he stepped onto the biggest stages with the calmness of a man who carried pressure like a second skin. Moisés Caicedo's impact on Chelsea had a different tone. His presence did not immediately create beauty. It created stability. Without him, Chelsea's midfield felt hollow, exposed, breakable. With him, it gained structure. His interceptions triggered counters. His recovery runs prevented disasters. His ability to remain ice cold when pressed by multiple opponents gave Chelsea a composure they had lacked during their chaotic rebuild. He allowed creative players to operate without fear that losing the ball would collapse the entire system. Statistically, their numbers reflect their roles more than their value. Rice's chance creation, long passes, and goals position him as a dual midfielder. Caicedo's interceptions, tackles, and pass accuracy position him as a specialist, whose influence is not captured by goal involvement. Rice contributes directly to scoring. Caicedo contributes to preventing scoring. Both contributions are essential, both irreplaceable, but neither belongs in the same column. That is why the debate rages, because people insist on comparing weapons built for different battles. If Arsenal ever lost Declan Rice for a long period, they could shift systems, adjust roles, or lean on the depth that elite squads often have. But if Chelsea lost Moisés Caicedo, their structure would collapse like a tent with no center pole. The Blues are built around his ability to absorb pressure. Without him, the shape of the team bends until it breaks. This does not mean Caicedo is better than Rice. It means Chelsea's dependency on him is greater. Yet, in another breath, Rice delivers something Chelsea's young squad would die to have: a leader who lifts standards by example, voice, and presence. When Rice speaks, the pitch listens. When Caicedo moves, the pitch shifts with him. One leads with authority, the other leads with actions performed at a speed that scares attackers. Their weaknesses remain part of their mythology. Declan Rice's occasional lack of acceleration when turning under pressure can give nimble attackers a half yard. Moisés Caicedo's eagerness can transform a perfect tackle into a radical one. Rice sometimes plays safe when the opportunity to pass exists. Caicedo sometimes passes simple when a line breaker is available. But perfection has never been the currency of football legends. What matters is the direction of their evolution, and both are climbing. As seasons passed, Declan Rice continued to become not just a midfielder, but a symbol of Arsenal's journey, from hopeful challengers to actual contenders. His performances built foundations. His goals built momentum. His leadership built belief. Fans embraced him not as a signing, but as a pillar. Children learned his name before they learned league tables. He personifies Arsenal's shift from promising to terrifying. Moisés Caicedo, in contrast, represents Chelsea's defiance against chaos. The club that has lived in turbulence found in him a center of gravity. The man who was signed for more money than any midfielder in English history became the anchor in a sea of transition. When he plays well, Chelsea breathe. When he presses, the team steps forward. When he wins tackles, confidence spreads like a pulse. So who is better? The question echoes across pubs, TV studios, social media feeds, family living rooms, stadium stands. But the question itself is flawed. Declan Rice is the midfielder you choose when you want a general who can defend, pass, break lines, dominate aerially, and score goals that swing seasons. Moisés Caicedo is the midfielder you choose when you want a shield, a destroyer, a stabilizer, a man who wins ground duels as though gravity bends in his favor. The truth is not that one is superior, it is that they are complementary opposites, trapped inside a debate created by transfer fees. Arsenal bought their future captain long before the armband touches his arm. Chelsea bought their defensive cornerstone long before the rebuild is complete. Both clubs got exactly what they needed, exactly when they needed it. Both players justified their prices, not by numbers, but by influence. Declan Rice will define Arsenal's midfield for the next decade through leadership, passing, consistency, and moments that turn matches into stories fans recount for years. Moisés Caicedo will define Chelsea's midfield for the next decade through interceptions, intensity, courage in tight spaces, and the quiet brilliance of doing the invisible work that wins battles long before the final score decides the war. Their rivalry is not a duel. It is a mirror reflecting two visions of midfield mastery. And the Premier League, in its hunger for narratives, may argue endlessly about who is superior. But the only certainty is this: when history looks back on this era, it will speak the names Declan Rice and Moisés Caicedo in the same breath, not because they are alike, but because together they redefined what the heart of a football team can look like. Both players carry paths shaped by struggle, triumph, redemption, and reinvention. Both control games in their own way. Both will be remembered not simply for their price tags, but for the imprint they leave on English football's greatest stages. And when future fans revisit this period, they will understand that the debate was never truly about choosing one over the other. It was about witnessing two extraordinary journeys that converged in the same league at the same time, forcing everyone to rethink what greatness in midfield really looks like. Tell me which midfielder you would build your team around right now. Name the one weakness that could ruin his career. Comment who you think will have more trophies in 5 years. Follow for the tactical breakdowns that expose football's biggest myths.